All right, boom, bust, and beware. Let's talk about some teams in college football that are boom, bust, and beware.
So today we're going to be giving our boom, bust, and beware teams. And before I get into that, I want to thank y'all all that have been watching. I think we got one video that's nearing 900 views at the time that we filmed this. We got 75 subscribers. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do. We need it bad. We need the clout. We need the potential future money.
Yeah. We're not getting famous without it.
That's probably not going to happen. But anyways, also I want to let it be known this is not our predictions of what we think is going to necessarily happen, but more of a possibility or more a real potential. So I'll start with my boom team for this year, and that's LSU because last year they went 5-5. They had a rough year coming off a national championship where they were arguably one of the greatest teams in college football history, but that was kind of expected.
Right.
It was, I'm not going to call it a fluke year, but it was definitely sort of out of the ordinary in a sense, not necessarily expected to be able to be repeated by LSU, but with whoever they have at quarterback this year, whether that's Miles Brennan or Max Johnson, who we've kind of been hearing that Max Johnson's probably beating out Miles Brennan at this point. And with them being 5-5 last year, they really can only go up. It's kind of hard for them to go bad. And I'm looking at their schedule. They start out at UCLA, which I think that's a losable game, but they should win that game.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you continue on. You got McNeese. You got Central Michigan. McNeese State.
That's a tough one.
That is a tough non-conference
game of the week.
Who is that?
Then you got Central Michigan, Mississippi State, Auburn, Kentucky. Then you got Florida.
So as far as non-con goes for them, that's pretty easy route.
Yeah. And, I mean, really, looking at their schedule up until Alabama.
Their East opponent is Florida.
Yeah, and, I mean,
They have another East opponent?
Kentucky.
Okay.
And then you got Auburn. Bo Nix Jr. year, he's been inconsistent. You got a brand new head coach. Really, there's potential, and they got Florida at home in Death Valley.
8-4, 9-3.
Well, there's a chance they could be undefeated.
Outside
of
the Alabamas and Auburn's the Arkansas team. Watch out for Ole Miss team is going to compete with them. Outside of their West opponents, they should win every game other than the West.
Yeah, and I mean that would be. Let's just say they are undefeated. I don't know how many games that is exactly going into the Alabama game.
And that's their last game of the season.
No, they still got a handful after that.
Oh, okay.
But up to that point, they'll be 6, 7-0. You're going to have a highly ranked LSU team, a highly ranked Bama team.
Where do they play Arkansas?
They play Arkansas at home.
Okay.
And then they finish off the year after Bama, which they probably lose that game. But
where they play Bama at Alabama?
At Alabama.
Yeah.
And then you got Louisiana Monroe and then A&M. But I mean,
that'll be a good game.
Based off the schedule, you're looking at a team that should probably go 9-3 this year.
9-3, 10-2, and if you manage to knock off Alabama,
and
you could contend in the West. Yeah.
So that's my boom team, and that's being LSU.
Good pick there.
Okay, you want to go ahead, David?
Yeah. So my boom team's gonna be Oregon, mainly because Dallas kind of took who I was gonna boom. But so Oregon last year makes their conference championship on kind of like a fluke. Didn't really deserve to be there, but
sure.
They got in and they actually won the thing. But they weren't supposed to be there. COVID kind of got them in there. If anybody last year benefited off COVID, it was Oregon.
It was the Oregon Ducks.
But so Oregon returns a lot of guys on defense. They return Kayvon there on the defensive line. I think he's looked at as a top 10 pick, top 5 pick, potentially like a top 2 or 3 pick. He's probably the best, if not one of the best, defensive linemen in college football going into the year. They return those 2 linebackers in Flo and Sewell.
Yeah.
And one of their corners is regarded as one of the best in the Pac-12. I mean, their defense is pretty much loaded. I think Oregon can run the table and go undefeated. They probably won't. We know Oregon.
That's true.
Their head coach is a winner, though. He knows how to win. As a player, he won, and as a coach, he wins.
I'll tell you what, Mario Cristobal is recruiting is probably the best in the Pac-12, and he's up there as one of the best recruiters in college football.
That's another reason they're my boom is their recruiting. Right. I mean, you see they've over and for one Oregon, the brand.
Yeah.
To be their location, man, they can recruit.
Oh yeah.
And
probably the best jerseys in all of college football.
And especially with the NIL, all that Nike money up there.
Oh yeah,
that could end up being big with recruiting.
When it comes to the West Coast, they're the ones. Right. All those big businesses out there, those monopoly businesses in the West, they're gonna benefit. That's why USC. There's a bunch of guys. But if we were to talk recruiting, we could give a little bit on that. But so Oregon's my pick. They return a decent bit over at the offensive side. They replace their quarterback. That's the biggest thing for me is replacing your quarterback. I don't care who you put in that slot, how talented they are. You replace your quarterback position is tough, and that's a big deal. Right. Other than replacing quarterback, if I'm an Oregon fan, I feel really good on the year. Oregon, boom, they can slip in the playoffs if things go right.
Yeah, for sure. My boom team, very familiar team, North Carolina this year. And I was hesitant to put North Carolina because usually when you do boom, they had a bad season last year.
Yep.
But North Carolina, I think, finished 9-2 or 9-2, 8-2 last season. I think their ceiling's very high this year with Sam Howell coming back, Mac Brown. Mac is back, baby.
I'll tell you what, Mac Brown is. I'll tell you, the worst thing Texas ever did was fire Mac Brown.
That's exactly right.
I mean, look at Texas now.
But yeah, they're definitely my boom team. In my opinion, if I'm a North Carolina fan and we don't make the ACC championship, it's a losing season.
Unless Derek King's ridiculous.
Well, not only that, I will tell you, and I agree. I've got North Carolina, as you'll see later on, as one of my teams on here. But, I mean, they don't have they are in the ACC, but with their ACC schedule, they've got a tougher ACC schedule, some losable games on there. So I wouldn't say I would be totally surprised if they don't at least make it to the ACC championship, especially with Miami in their division. But I agree,
they play Notre Dame as well this year.
Yeah, I mean, but they're definitely one of the favorites. Absolutely.
Yeah,
well, if you're North Carolina, if you want to win a conference championship under Mac Brown, you're going to do it this year.
I agree.
Because of the elite quarterback. Yeah. You probably have the best quarterback.
Which have they? I'm not sure. Have they recruited anybody? Like, obviously they recruited somebody, but anybody.
I know they're rolling pretty solid in recruiting, but as far as the quarterback position, I don't know.
But yeah, they're my boom team. So let's move to.
Before we go any further,
go ahead.
Boom is teams we expect to improve.
Right.
Yeah.
Bust is teams we expect to degress.
To drop. Yeah.
And then our beware is pretty much a team. Watch out for this team. They're kind of a sleeper. They can knock your game off any week.
And so we'll move on to my bust. My bust team is Texas A&M. And again, this is not necessarily our prediction, but a real possibility. And the main reason is because they went 9-1 last year. They were the second. They were the second best team in the West, obviously behind the Gauntlet, which is Alabama. And I mean,
returned a very experienced quarterback.
Yeah, well, not Texas A&M.
A&M? They returned last year.
Oh, last year. I thought you were talking about this year.
Kellen Mond's gone.
Yeah, that's on me. I thought you were talking about this year that Kellen Mond was back. So, they have an easy schedule, though. When I look at their schedule, their non-conference is literally nothing. Their non-conference games are Kent State, New Mexico. You got Prairie View A&M, which I've never even heard of that one, and Colorado.
Second team of the day we haven't heard of.
Yeah,
these teams?
I mean, their non-conference is super easy, and even within the West, you got Arkansas. They got that one at home. You got Mississippi State. You got at Missouri. You got at Ole Miss, which I think that's probably a bit of a trap game.
Yeah.
Ole Miss, Matt Corral, Lane Kiffin, another year at Ole Miss. But in all reality, I think there's some losable games there. Obviously, Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Actually, no, that one's at home. And then you got Auburn. That could always be a trap game. LSU. And again, like I mentioned, Ole Miss. I think there's some losable games there. You got a brand new quarterback that they're going to be trotting out there this year, whether that's Haynes King or Zach. I believe it's Calzada. And they're both highly touted guys, so it's not like they're battling two true freshmen or two walk-ons. The guys battling are some highly touted guys, but I think there's a chance that with the expectations that Jimbo Fisher and the A&M fans have, that they could go 8-4, they could go 9-3, and it'd be a little bit less of a unit.
Or even 7-5 if things go bad. And the thing that's interesting about A&M is you could really put them in any of these three options.
No, I agree.
You could say, hey, they can boom, they can win the West. You could say they're going to bust. Yeah. You could say beware of them because while they may only go 9-3, 10-2, they can knock off your team on any day. But at the same time, they could boom. They could drop a game to Arkansas.
Yeah.
Drop a game to Missouri.
I like how you said that. I really do believe that Texas A&M could fit in any three categories.
Yeah. Who's your bust team, David?
So my bust team is going to be Florida this year. For one, they got gutted. Similar to LSU in years prior, and they had that terrible year years prior. So LSU has that big year, come back, drop way off. Same thing with Florida. I think is what we're going to expect, and that doesn't mean they go 4-8.
Right.
But I think you see Florida go a 8-4 or 9-3.
Yeah.
And if you're a Florida fan, it's not what you want, and not what you've grown to expect. And Florida's kind of known for that over the years. To every few years have that bad down year. Right before they hired Mullen, they had that terrible year. But the thing is, Florida went 8-4 last year, and they only played those 10-game regular season games. Made their conference championship, got blown out. And so here's the deal. Yes, they won the East. And so you're saying, well, pretty much my point is, for one, they're not winning the East this year. And not only they're not winning the East, if at the grand scheme of it all, they finish third, not surprised.
Yeah.
Emory Jones is a major question mark. He could be a very good quarterback. He could be a very, very bad quarterback. So Florida's my bust. They got gutted. They lose a bunch of guys. Defensively, you've got a couple guys that are very good. Their defensive line's going to be good, and they've got Kyrie Elam at corner. Other than that, they've got to replace a good bit. They lose the 5-star quarterback on the defense and Marco Wilson, the shoe thrower there versus LSU.
Cost them that.
But costing the SEC. Though he was clowned for that, Marco Wilson was a pretty good ball player. But they had to replace a lot. So Florida's definitely my bust on that.
Real quick, though, since Dan Mullen is kind of known for somewhat of a quarterback whisperer, we've seen what he did with Kyle Trask. We've seen what he did with Dak Prescott at Mississippi State. Let's just say, play devil's advocate here a little bit. Let's say Emory Jones comes out. He's a Heisman candidate. Yeah. He's top 3. He's that guy. You know the Florida roster better than I would. Do you think there's any possibility, if Emory Jones just out of his mind, elite, that they could sneak up and win the East? If he's just crazy out of his mind.
Yes, because of the fact you pretty much just have to win that one game.
Right, that's true.
Yeah.
But even if Emory Jones is a Heisman candidate, I mean, Lamar Jackson was a Heisman candidate for Louisville, but they weren't competing nationally.
Right. He could have the stats, but not necessarily the wins.
Florida's roster from top to bottom is depleted.
I agree.
And it's depleted because they don't recruit at a high level.
Right.
If you can't recruit with the high-level competitors, you can't play with the high-level competitors.
Yep.
Florida's going to lose 3 or 4 games this year.
Yeah.
And I know Dan Mullen's great with quarterbacks. I don't believe in Emory Jones. In their bowl game, he's better than Kyle Trask. Just because Kyle Trask had a bad game, threw 2 picks. Right. Emory Jones went out there, threw the ball 16 times, went 8 for 16 for 80 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, you could put the mailman, the air mailman, Stetson Bennett out there. He could do better than that.
Yeah.
I'm not a Emory Jones believer. He's had a full year to work with Dan Mullen, so yes, things can happen. Don't really believe in Emory Jones here. He could prove me wrong.
Yeah.
But that's definitely my bust.
My bust is Notre Dame.
Fighting Irish.
Fighting Irish, yes. I know Brian Kelly, great coach. But Notre Dame finished 10-2 last season, number 5 in the AP poll. Don't expect them to do that this year. You're replacing Ian Book, the one you can't tackle. One Clemson has a terrible time tackling.
That boy's slippery.
Yeah, I swear. Yeah,
I'll tell you what though, Brent Venables did mix things up great in the ACC championship.
He did,
but when we played him in South Bend at Notre Dame, oh my God.
Yeah, for sure.
He was pretty much Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, but they're replacing him. Multiple people on the offensive line. Some of their games that I noticed that they have to go to Wisconsin. Always a tough game. Cincinnati, as we've talked about before, Cincinnati could be
Notre Dame, though they're not in a conference, they typically play a tough schedule.
Yeah, they do.
You're in and you're out.
Yeah.
And they do themselves dirty. I mean, you're not in a conference, and you line your gauntlet up, and you got
from my understanding, if you're not in a conference, you choose exactly who you play, don't you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, they pick pretty much every week, and they line that up themselves.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you're Notre Dame,
well,
you want in the playoffs, you have to go 12.
I was going to say,
100%.
but I think with that, you've got such good teams now that if they don't have the resume, and even if they could go 11-1, 12-0, but if they don't have the resume against big teams, they're not going to make it.
But if everybody win out, stuff like that.
Right, exactly.
But I'll tell you what, like David said, year in and year out, Notre Dame plays one of the toughest schedules.
Oh, yeah. So
every game for Notre Dame's a playoff?
Yeah, so, I mean, so they play at Wisconsin, they play Cincinnati, they got USC Trojans at home, North Carolina at home, they do have them at home this year, and then at Stanford. I mean, they could possibly lose. I mean, 2 or 3 of those games.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going 10-2.
Oh, I think they go 9-3 this year.
Yeah, 9-3, 8-4.
They'll
possibly
get a good bowl game and all.
So they're my bust team for this year.
So my beware team is Dallas's boom team, that being North Carolina, and the main reason is Sam Howell. I'm a big believer in Sam Howell. You probably saw the top 5 video. If not, go watch it. Our top 5 college quarterbacks, and Sam Howell's my number 1. I believe he is an elite guy. He's a first-round pick, probably a top 10 pick, and I think he's that good. Now they definitely lost a lot on the offensive side of the ball. You lose Daz Newsome, one of the better wide receivers. You lose your top 2 running backs. And, I mean, last year their running back core was arguably one of the best in the country with their 2 monster head.
Probably the best duo.
Say that. But you also got great DBs. You got Tony Grimes. You got Storm Duck. Shout out Bowling Springs alum.
Represent.
And, I mean, they've still got some good key pieces. There's still some question marks there, but you do play in the ACC, a weaker schedule. But like I mentioned earlier, they do have a tougher ACC schedule. You got Virginia Tech at Blacksburg to start the season. First week of the game, first week of the year, And, I mean, even though Virginia Tech right now is more mediocre, playing
tough.
in Blacksburg,
always a tough
first
place
game
to
of the
play.
year, that's always a bit of a trap game. You got Miami of De'Aaron King, and I believe he's a good quarterback. So, I mean, there's still some questions there, but I do believe in Mac Brown. I believe in Sam Howell. Let's say they run the table. make it to the ACC championship game, I don't think it's impossible. They knock off Clemson.
They're going to have to go through Clemson.
Let me ask you this.
Right.
Let's say that Clemson loses to Georgia and UNC knocks them off in the conference championship. Clemson has 2 losses. They're out the playoffs. But let's say UNC has 2 losses. Let's say they drop the game to Miami.
Right.
And let's say they drop another game but still win their
Notre
division. And to Notre Dame, so that doesn't count in the ACC.
Yeah. Are they in? Yeah.
So, I don't. It would all depend on everybody else.
A 2-loss Notre Dame, or a 2-loss UNC rather, with a loss Notre Dame.
Well, I mean,
and Miami gets in.
If they knock off Clemson and win the ACC championship.
When you have Cincinnati and Oregon, all right, let's say Oregon has their conference. Cincinnati, let's say they're undefeated. Georgia and Bama, let's say they both have 1 loss. And ACC's left out.
Yeah, not trying to.
You've got
that scenario.
This is my opinion. If you have this is just me. If you have a 1-loss Georgia,
and a 1-loss Bama.
But I'm saying let's just say Georgia's one loss is to Bama in the SEC championship.
They're in.
But you've got a 2-loss North Carolina and won the ACC championship. I think championships are bigger.
See, I honestly disagree. And the thing is,
has a 2-loss team ever got in? I don't believe they have.
I don't believe they have. But we've seen non-conference champions get in, being Alabama a couple years back. But I will say this real quick, and not to get ahead of ourselves because I know Cincinnati is one of your teams, but they play 2 Power 5 teams this year. I believe it's Notre Dame and Indiana, which will both potentially be top 20 teams if they go undefeated and run the table. And you got a 2-loss. Yeah, you got a 2-loss ACC championship.
Yeah, I would think so.
I think Cincinnati's in. Georgia beats Clemson week 1, loses closely to Bama. I think they're both in, and then you got Ohio State, say in the Big Ten or a Pac-12.
Yeah,
so
it'd be a good argument.
A 1-loss SEC champ or 1-loss Georgia that lost a close game to Bama is in.
Yeah, I guess that'd be a big thing is how bad they lost. If they lost to Bama, how bad it was.
And the only way they're not in is if Ohio State's undefeated. Clemson's undefeated.
Yeah.
Right. Oh yeah.
And
absolutely.
Cincinnati's undefeated. Yeah. And I'll say this, I wouldn't be shocked to see them put a 1-loss Georgia in over an undefeated Cincinnati.
I could see that.
I
think a lot of it depends on how bad that loss is.
You lose by 6, 7 points, maybe even 10.
You're in.
Georgia's getting in there because they've got the resume, big wins on the season.
Yeah.
But so that's not what we're talking about.
So who's your beware team?
My beware is Cincinnati, as John already hinted on. They go to Indy, or they play Indiana.
Yeah.
Play Notre Dame. They've got the schedule. If they win, they get in. They're definitely a sleeper team. But here's the deal: not only are they on my beware because they can make the playoffs, they're on my beware because if you're a Notre Dame fan, don't show up to Cincinnati sleeping.
Yeah.
And if you're an Indiana fan, don't show up to Cincinnati sleeping because they're gonna knock you off. They return Ritter, great quarterback.
Very much so.
It could be a top 5, definitely top 10 guy.
Yeah.
Great head coach. They return one of the nation's top 10 defenses in the nation.
And their secondary last year was legit.
Oh, elite secondary, and Cincinnati's a ball club,
yeah,
and they're going to play with the best of them, and they showed Georgia that, and they gave Georgia all they could handle and take them to the wire.
Yeah.
And so Cincinnati's my beware. If you play Cincinnati this year, watch out. I think Cincinnati does drop a game between Indiana and Notre Dame. I think they probably lose to Indiana but beat Notre Dame, but you never know. They could go.
Yeah.
Undefeated Cincinnati's probably in the playoffs.
I agree.
My beware team, it kills me to even bring this up, but my beware team is Georgia. I just
might as well have had Alabama right there.
Yeah, Alabama.
Clemson. A little bit obvious, but we'll take it.
It is. Well, and here's my thing. Unless you're a Georgia fan, every year Georgia fans, this is our year. This is our year, and non-Georgia fans say y'all said the same thing every
pretty
year.
Much, yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
Pretty much.
Y'all are recruiting well. Y'all can't do nothing with your recruits.
They call us the off-season national champions.
Yeah, exactly, over and over. But I think, and I wrote this down, that if there's going to be a year to win it, you better win it this year.
Oh, you have to. And
I know we say that every year, but if Georgia's going to win it, it's going to be this year.
Come from a Georgia fan. If we don't win it this year, we can still win it under Kirby Smart. This is no doubt our best chance.
Right. You have and where y'all have usually struggled, from what I've seen with Georgia, is your offense.
Oh, no doubt.
And your defense is always top notch, but y'all actually have an offense now. If you get past Clemson and how you look against Clemson, if you come out and you get past Clemson and you look good, and you should win out the rest of the regular season. Right. You got Bama, and Bama's going to be a waiting game. And if you play well against Bama, I mean, you could possibly win the national championship.
The deal is, and we've talked about this. If you're Georgia, pretty much beat everybody but Clemson and Bama.
Yep.
Beat one of them, and you're in.
Yeah, I think
agree.
so.
And I genuinely believe, on paper this year, I think Georgia's probably the most talented team on paper
going into the year.
Going into the season.
If we made a top 25, and we probably will, I wouldn't put them at number 1, just because I'm a Georgia fan. But top to bottom, they probably are the best.
Yeah, overall talent. Yeah,
on paper.
So that's my beware team. But
so boom, bust, beware. Let us know what your 3 teams would be in that slot, and who you agree with the most. And I'll say this: we tried to go different teams.
Right.
So if we collectively made a boom, bust, beware, which we didn't, I don't know where we'd go, but we could probably come to a good agreement there. But so boom, bust, and beware. Let us know what
yours are. Again, as always, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, do whatever y'all do.
And keep talking ball.
Keep talking ball.